go. Lo-do-do-do-do. Come on, baby. Let us go. It's time to go. Time to rock on. Okay, just getting set up. I'll start very, very shortly. Just need to make sure everything is working correctly. And as long as it is, okay. Alright, so sound is coming through. I'll give people time to get into the room because I am just slightly early, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. Just making sure I get things done when I say I'm going to do it. So for those of you who have joined me now, I am going to be answering questions near the end of the stream like I normally do. You are welcome to post comments or questions in the chat box right now. You don't need to wait. My intentions is, with all of my videos, I always try to make sure there's a questions and answers section near the end. So you're welcome to ask questions about the Sorcerer. If there aren't specific questions around the Sorcerer or I can't answer those questions, then I'll come back to that stuff later on. If you have questions regarding player and dungeon master options, I will probably open up to answering those questions as well if you want me to, but I'm going to try to focus on the Sorcerer for today. Okay, we're getting close to time to start. Welcome to everybody who has joined us. These videos are actually, surprisingly, I didn't realise just how complicated they are to sort out. But anyway, we are going to crack on. It's time to start. Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e or D&D 5e and how to play D&D 5e. We're going to be covering the Sorcerer. This is the Sorcerer's Basics, like 101 Fundamentals for a Sorcerer. And I will be using the pre-made character sheet for the Sorcerer that you can find on the official Dungeons & Dragons website. Now this is the level 1 version. It's a Dragonborn Sorcerer, and those pre-made character sheets go from level 1 right through to level 10. If you want additional information, you can seek that out through the Player's Handbook. So on page 99, you'll see information on how the Sorcerer works. And all of the information that I'm going through today is taken from there. So the Sorcerer is a master of magic, and not just magic, but a master of cosmic forces that are infused into them at birth through their bloodline. They specialize in manipulating magic, but also other creatures through social interactions. There's also a little bit of information that they can help you with in terms of knowing stuff, so they've got a little bit of knowledge as well. Sorcerers can take any spell that they know and change it and make it work differently within the game. This is the meta magic feature, and I will be talking more about meta magic in the future. So it'll make a spell more powerful, or extend it, change its very nature. It can also be incredibly unpredictable. One of the features of the Sorcerer is wild magic, and we'll talk about wild magic very, very briefly in this video, but I will come back to wild magic at some point. Now, the fundamentals to understanding the Sorcerer. There are quite a few, but much like the Wizard, the Sorcerer is a squishy class. It's always been a squishy class, and so that's the thing you need to understand. If you're going to be playing a Sorcerer, you need to make sure you have a decent armor class, and how you do that, whether that's with spells or armor, or staying behind the back line, staying with the party, keeping out of trouble. And as I said with the Wizard, do not follow the rogue anywhere. Absolutely not. Do not follow the rogue. It is not an option. Okay, your character will not last long if you start doing that. So the sorcerer can be approached in a couple of different ways. You can go with casting a spell or using magic in some way, or trying to influence the monsters, the NPCs, and any kind of creature that you come across. And I'm going to try to encourage people to go with influencing the characters, the NPCs, the monsters, and the creatures in the game, rather than going straight for the magic if they can. Much like I did with the wizard, where I said, look, try to focus on the skills rather than on the magic. Now, I know that's the fun part, casting magic, but I think you're going to find it's going to work out better for you in the long term by focusing on their skills and their ability to influence somebody else. So sorcerers have a few spells they can select, not very many, and as you can see from the chart, at level 1, they only know 2 spells. So there's a column that says spells known, and they literally only know 2 spells. That's not counting the cantrips. They know 4 cantrips, which is more than most class. I think it's probably the most that any class knows out of all of them. They know more cantrips than anybody else at level 1, which is great because cantrips are actually really useful, and if you select them correctly, you're going to be able to use them multiple times because it's infinite resource. But at level 1, you're only going to know 2 spells, and you get 2 spell slots. So you can cast 2 spells, and then that's it. You have expended your resources. And then, of course, you're going to have to go and have a long rest, which is probably pretty common to most people if you've been playing the game already. So my suggestion to you is when you're selecting your spells, try to take more damage dealing rather than utility. Just a small splattering of utility spells rather than lots of utility spells. You can go that way, but it requires somebody who's more experienced and knows what they're doing to be able to take a lot of utility spells when they're dealing with something like a sorcerer. You're not locked into your spells, so as you level up, you will be able to change things out if you want to do so. Now, when it comes to something like Mage Armor, if you're not multi-classing, say into Paladin, start taking a level in Paladin to get the armor, or you're not taking the Draconic Heritage Bloodline, then you probably will need to take Mage Armor as a spell, particularly if you're using a Wild Magic Sorcerer, just so you have a decent armor class. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in a really sticky spot. Charisma should be your highest ability score to be effective as a sorcerer. So try to put a 16 in there. 15 you can probably get away with. 14 it's a little bit rough. The numbers aren't so much an issue at higher levels. The numbers will be more of a problem when you're starting out, which is why I try to suggest trying to push out that charisma to a 16 when you start out. Now, whether you take Constitution or Dexterity after that, Constitution is recommended in the book as the next ability score to sort of push up or make one of your higher ones. Certainly not the highest, but one of your higher ones. It's really up to you whether you want to go Dexterity or you want to go Constitution, because either way, your particular character class is very squishy. So Arcana, look, I know you don't absolutely have to take Arcana as a selected proficient skill, but my recommendation is that you do, because it's not so much you're an expert like the wizard on magic, you are actually part of magic, unless of course you're having a character concept where you don't really know where your magic comes from and it's very new to you, and so therefore having proficiency in Arcana might not make any sense. And also too, you can pick up Arcana later on if you want to by using feats and selecting a background that has Arcana, even if you don't pick it up through the class proficiencies. Stand behind the front line. Please stand behind the front. Even in the middle is a good place. The sandwich, okay? You are not the bread. You are the meat in the middle. You are the tomato in the middle. You do not want to stand in the front or the back in combat. And when you're going in a marching order, adventuring, exploring locations, try to make sure you're either at the back or in the middle. There are 2 Sorcerer Origins that you can select from the player's handbook, and that's the Draconic Bloodline, which I would have to say is probably the strongest option out of all of them there, simply because of that Draconic Resilience, which gives you a better armor class, gives you resistance to a certain type of damage, dependent on the Draconic ancestry that you take. So you get one of those resistances, which is very, very good. You get that elemental affinity, so you can actually make certain types of spells that you select more powerful based on your Draconic origin. So if your origin is, say, the Black Dragon and your damage type is acid, then you can make acid more powerful by using sorcery points. You can also, later on as you level up, you can get wings, you can fly, and you're also going to develop that Draconic presence. So that's the ability to frighten your enemies or anybody who gives you a hard time. Now, wild magic is very DM or Dungeon Master dependent. One of the aspects to wild magic is its predictable nature, and I would say right now, if you're deciding to pick up that particular origin, please talk to your Dungeon Master first and the players. Not just the Dungeon Master, but the players as well. So, and the reason being is there is a section under the Wild Magic Surge that states that the DM can have you roll a d20 immediately after you cast a spell that is first level or higher. That is the key thing to remember. Because if you have a Dungeon Master who says, no, you're not rolling on the Wild Magic chart, it's too unpredictable, things might go wrong, and I don't want that in my game. The problem with the Wild Magic option is it can unravel the game pretty quickly. I know players always get very nervous at the table when somebody's playing Wild Magic and they start rolling on that chart. It has the potential to win the day or wipe the entire party out in one blow, particularly at low level. It's not so much of an issue at higher levels, but at low levels it really can sting. So that's why I recommend talking to your Dungeon Master. Make sure they're up for you playing that type of character, and they will allow you to use the Wild Magic chart, and they're not going to put a kibosh on you using your Wild Magic Surge, because that's one of the fun aspects. It's very unpredictable. It can be quite hilarious, but it also can be a bit soul-wrenching if you wind up taking out the entire party and they didn't really want to wind up having to start new characters or have their characters die from their own party member. It's one of the things you really need to talk about with players. I highlight that many, many times. Now, there are some really interesting aspects to wild magic, which is the ability to re-roll dice. The chart is always also awesome. The ability to change how things pan out for your magic. So that's always nice too. I wouldn't say it is the most powerful, because out of the gate, in terms of the passive aspects of any of the origins, the Draconic Bloodline has it, and in droves. And if you combine that with something like your breath weapon, if you have taken a Dragonborn, then ho-hum, it's going to be awesome. There is a bit of overlap, so if you're taking something like a Dragonborn and you're taking the Draconic Bloodline, you're going to have some overlap in terms of your resistances and other abilities, and that's just one of the things you have to sort of either accept or not accept. Okay, so that is the gist around it. As I said, Wild Magic Surge, highly risky, just got to be careful about it. Remember, it is good to use your skills. Use your charisma to persuade, intimidate, and deceive NPCs, monsters, and creatures, rather than blasting them with fire or other destructive spells. And there's some obvious reasons for that. Most of it comes around the fact that if you deal with things without being aggressive first, there's a chance for gathering information, picking up additional allies, gaining favor. All those sorts of things are really, really useful when you're playing the game. So that's why I want to highlight utilizing that when you're running your game. And also too, when you're playing the game, whether you're running it or playing it, don't forget that you don't have to always rely on damage dealing spells. I mean, sorcerers do really well with making spells more powerful and doing damage, but if you are careful, you can put a bit of finesse into it, because meta magic allows you to change the very nature of how magic is used. And one of those aspects is the ability to use the careful spell, that is to use sorcery points, which you can change in and out with spell slots, so you don't wind up targeting your allies. The ability to increase the distance of spells, but with the distance spell meta magic, empowering a spell and making it more powerful. You can use that as well. Extending a spell's duration, heightening a spell, making it more difficult to actually avoid its effect, quickening a spell. So in other words, the fact that you can actually take a spell and take an action to cast it and turn that into a bonus action to cast it by spending sorcery points is one of the highlights of using meta magic, because now you can cast Fireball if you've got Fireball and then a cantrip. Perfectly fine. So your Fireball would be transformed by quickening from an action to a bonus action, cast Fireball as a bonus action, and then follow up with a cantrip. And it could be any cantrip that you like. So really helpful. Subtle spell, taking out the somatic and verbal components of the spell. Twin spell is probably the big winner, but you can only target one creature when you use this thing. And what happens when you're starting out? You've only got 2 spells at level 1. What spells should you be picking up? Look, the first thing I would say is let's go first for the cantrips. You've got 4 cantrips you can pick. I would tend to go with something like a damaging spell, and then the rest be utility, or 2 damaging spells and a couple of utility. So something like Firebolt would be my first pick. I like fire, I'm into fire. If you have an origin that is more around cold, then pick up something like Ray of Frost. Shocking Grasp is also fine, but you have to be up close to use that. I think Firebolt is one of the better options. So out of the damage dealing ones, those are the ones I would aim for. And then in terms of utility, things like Mage Hand, Minor Illusion, Mending, and Prestidigitation in terms of cantrips. So you will need to make some choices. I think probably the best options in terms of how I would look at it is I would probably go Firebolt, Mending, Minor Illusion, and after that I would either pick up my Shocking Grasp, or I'd pick up, actually that's it, isn't it? Firebolt, Mage Hand, Mending, and Minor Illusion. There's 4. Done. That's probably how I would shape it, but you can shape it however you like. So at level 1 you have limited options. Look, if you don't have that Draconic Bloodline, you are going to definitely need Mage Armor. And if you don't have decent armor, so you don't have an armor proficiency, because sorcerers don't, so if you haven't multi-classed first before you've gone into sorcerer, or you're going to do it later on, you're definitely going to need something like Mage Armor. So that would be one of the spells I would suggest. If you don't need Mage Armor because you're wearing decent armor and you've got that Draconic Bloodline, then take Shield, because Shield is a very good spell. It's a reaction and you can cast it to stop something from doing some significant damage to you. It's +5 to your armor class, so that's a big deal. Next, in terms of damage, I would say it's a toss-up between Magic Missile and Chromatic Orb. At low levels, it's a bit awkward to use Chromatic Orb because there is a cost to using it. You do need to spend a bit of money to be able to cast the spell. So Magic Missile would be the one I'd go for, and when you get an opportunity, try to bring in Chromatic Orb. And the reason is Chromatic Orb can be increased in power, and the other reason for taking it is you can change it, the damage type can be adjusted. And that's really important for getting past damage resistance. One of those fantastic spells, Chromatic Orb. So that's basically the gist of the Sorcerer. I don't want to say anything more. I'm going to start answering questions, but if you found this video helpful or informative, please share and like the video, like all the other videos I talk about. If you're not already subscribed and you like this sort of content, please click that subscribe button, and beside the subscribe button on my channel is a bell button, and if you press that you get an occasional notification, lets you know when a new video goes up, and it also lets you know when I'm live streaming. And I live stream so often that it can be quite useful to be able to jump in and be present during the live stream. So hitting the bell button will notify you. I'm doing my best to make sure I notify people more in advance when I go live stream, particularly on a day when I know I can do it at a certain time. So clicking the bell button is very important. I do videos every single day either way, so you can watch the live streams or the replay later. It's up to you. I do occasionally get the opportunity to edit down my videos so they're a little bit shorter, so if you're waiting for the shorter version, they will eventually come. It's just based on my time. Now, if you want to ask questions, stay around in the chat, stay in the live stream. I will answer those questions very shortly, in just a couple of minutes. And if you're not part of the live stream, down in the comments, ask some questions about the sorcerer that you might have. Tell me, if you've had any issues with what I've talked about today, or maybe you have something to add that I've missed out that needed to be said, or if there's something you want me to focus on, maybe there's a particular aspect to the sorcerer you want me to talk about, you can put that down in the comments. And if you want to support my channel, watching my videos is really helpful. I get a small amount of ad revenue from AdSense and YouTube. It's not an awful lot, but it's enough. If you want to really support my channel, I don't do Patreon, but down in the description there are affiliate links and you can buy stuff online. I get a small commission, you pay the same price, and you just, when you go through those links, you don't even have to buy the thing I've linked to. You can just go through the link, buy something else, and away you go. You supported me and you can buy whatever it is that you were planning to buy online. I think that's the best way to do it, rather than spending additional money that you may not already have. Okay, so that is it. We are ready to wrap up and start answering questions for those in the live stream. But till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Just give me a second, stay in the chat. I'm just going to have a drink of water and I will answer questions. Okay, alright, let's have a look here. Lego Lake, hi, how's it going? Here in Brazil today, it's Carnival holiday. Sounds fun. Happy Carnival to you, Lego. I'm glad you can make the stream. Okay, Jacob, what have you got here? Jacob Hatfield. What would you recommend as the best meta magic option? You can only get to choose a few, right? Yes, that's right. If I'll bring up the chart so you can see the chart, because that will shows you when you get the meta magic options. So we'll go back to the chart so you can see that, and we'll discuss that. So the first thing you'll notice is you're going to pick up your first meta magic at level 3, and then as you level up, level 10, you'll get another meta magic option, and then when you get to level 17. So those are the meta magics that you can pick up. Okay, so you're going to get to pick 2. So at 3rd level, you gain the ability to twist your spells as you need. You gain 2 of the following meta magic options of your choice. You gain another one at 10th level, and at 17th level you get another one. So in total, by the time you get to 17th level, you should have about 4. So 3rd level 2, 10th level 3, 17th level 4. So what is the best options for your meta magic? I'm going to tell you right now that at some point you're going to wind up with big area effect spells. If you're playing a sorcerer, it would be a no-brainer that at some point you're going to have Fireball. Even if you don't pick up Fireball and you pick up another area effect spell, which would be a sensible thing to do with the sorcerer, so you're more on par with the wizard. It's all very well targeting one thing, but it's also very useful to have something like Fireball, something that targets multiple locations. And I would say Fireball's a no-brainer. Go with Careful Spell, because there's no guarantee you're going to get to act first, and then your party members, if they're going to be useful and helpful to you, they'll stay out of combat long enough for you to launch the Fireball or the area effect spell. You don't want to affect them. You want to keep them out of the mix. And you can't do that unless you can sculpt that spell in some way, and Careful Spell is the way to do it by using your sorcery points, which is why I would say that is one of the better ones to pick up. After that, I think it's really a choice between Quicken Spell, and the reason for Quicken Spell is the ability to cast 2 spells, a big end spell, something that is not normally a bonus action to cast, which you can change down from an action to a bonus action, and then also be able to cast a cantrip at the same time. So essentially that means at low level you can cast something like Magic Missile as a bonus action, which is going to hit and do damage, and then follow up with a cantrip, and that cantrip could be Firebolt or Ray of Frost or whatever it is that you've selected. And that's why I would say Quicken Spell is one of the more useful spells to have, just because you can cast more spells and 1 round. And the other one is obviously Twin Spell. So you could, it's a toss up between Quicken Spell and Twin Spell. I think that you're probably going to be able to pump out more damage with Twin Spell, provided you've picked a spell that is only targeting 1 creature. You don't really want to twin a spell that's a cantrip. That would make like no sense. You want to be twinning a spell that's at least level 1 or higher. So if you've got something like, if you decided not to pick up Magic Missile and you've got Chromatic Orb, which is only targeting 1 thing, then absolutely get the twin spell option for your meta magic. If you have a spell that affects multiple locations, then I'd go with Quicken Spell. But if you only have a bunch of spells that target 1 creature, then use the Twin Spell option, because you can't target multiple creatures with the Twin Spell feature for the meta magic. It has to be only targeting 1 creature at a time. So hopefully that answered your question, Jacob. I've one of my favourite aspects to the Sorcerer, and I haven't had an opportunity to play it very often, but what I've noticed at high level with a Sorcerer, it can definitely hold its own in battle at high level, and it can be the difference between success and failure, which is why it's such an awesome class. But what I have noticed is a lot of people tend to beat up on the Sorcerer. You know, the Sorcerer is not as good as it used to be because we don't have spontaneous casting. Now we're limited in the types of spells we can cast. Whereas before we had, we could cast anything on the list as long as we had enough spells left to cast for that day. So I understand that concept. I understand that people feel like it might be a step down, but it's actually a really good class to play if you insist on playing a caster when you're new to the game. Wizards are not friendly for new players, but I feel like the Warlock and the Sorcerer are actually pretty manageable. I think you'll be doing fine with something like a Sorcerer when you're starting out playing the game, which is why I encourage people to play a Sorcerer at level 1 or level 2, or even a Warlock, rather than going straight to Wizard, which I know a lot of people really want to do, but it's such a complicated class in comparison. Okay, so I've answered that question. I can see that there's a couple of people in here, and Jacob, you're welcome. I'm glad I was able to answer your question regarding meta magic options. I don't see too many other questions. Maybe that's a sign that we need to sign off for today and catch up with everybody some other time. Just remember that there's a lot of flexibility with the Sorcerer. You can change out those sorcery points for spell slots. You can change out spell slots for sorcery points, so you can use your meta magic when you get access to meta magic, which is why it's pretty awesome. And you can that changes the whole way the game operates by having access to something like sorcery points. It is a renewable source, but you've still got to deal with that long rest, so make sure that you don't pump everything out in the first encounter unless you're sure that's the only battle you're going to be fighting in that particular day. I think this is a good point to stop. Got no more questions coming through, and I'm going to sign off and let you guys get on with things, whether you've got to go to sleep, go to work, go back to sleep, go have a meal, go see the family, watch another video, all those sorts of things. And I don't know if I'll be back tomorrow to do a live stream like this. It's probably unlikely. I probably will have a pre-recorded video that I will upload, and that'll be available probably tomorrow to watch. I'm not too sure. It could be a review or it could be a how to play. I'm still trying to decide. It's like all things. I'm not entirely sure exactly what I'm going to do, but I know we're going to be dealing with the Sorcerer for quite some time because I'm set up for that right now. Okay, we'll see you later, and you guys have a good day.